Ladies and gentlemen, imagine standing at the edge of a harbor, gazing up at a ship so massive it blocks the skyline. It rises from the sea like a floating skyscraper, sleek, gleaming, and grander than anything that has ever sailed the oceans before. This isn't a vessel from a century ago. This isn't the Titanic. It's something far more advanced, far more colossal. A ship engineered in the modern era, armed with every safety measure known to man, crafted to dominate the seas, and then, in a blink, it was gone. No mayday, no trace, just silence. The vessel in question, which we'll call Leviathan for the sake of this story, was not just another cruise liner or freighter. It was a titan of the modern world, over 200 feet long, stretching beyond the length of 4 football fields placed end to end. With a gross tonnage exceeding that of the Titanic by nearly 50%, and powered by the latest hybrid propulsion systems, the Leviathan was hailed as the pinnacle of maritime engineering. It carried not only passengers and cargo, but the confidence of a century's worth of progress in shipbuilding. This was no relic of the past. It was the embodiment of the present, of everything we believed we had mastered about the seas. When the Titanic was lost in 1912, we could almost understand. That was an era of early wireless communication, poorly mapped icebergs, and limited emergency protocols. But the Leviathan sailed in a time of global satellite tracking, encrypted digital communications, and hulls that could withstand forces greater than most storms could offer. Ships like the Leviathan weren't supposed to vanish. Not in this century, not with this kind of technology on board, and yet it did. What makes this disappearance so chilling and so humbling is not just the size of the ship, but the sheer scale of the precautions taken to ensure that something like this would never happen. The Leviathan boasted advanced navigation systems that triangulated positioning via multiple GPS satellites, sonar mapping to detect objects hundreds of meters below the surface, and reinforced safety compartments that were meant to keep it afloat even in the event of catastrophic hull breaches. It carried redundant communication systems, satellite uplinks, emergency beacons, encrypted radio. Some said it was virtually unsinkable. Sound familiar? But this story isn't just about a ship. It's about the illusion of control, the false belief that technology has given us total dominion over nature. The oceans, though mapped and measured, remain vast, deep, and at times utterly indifferent to human achievement. We thought we had learned our lesson from the Titanic. We thought we had built safeguards that made the tragedies of the past impossible in the present. But the sea, as it has always done, reminded us, you may build larger, stronger, smarter vessels, but you will never tame me entirely. The Leviathan had set sail on a routine voyage, not a risky expedition, not a journey through hostile waters, just a well-charted route from one major port to another. Hundreds of ships take similar paths every week without issue. It had a seasoned crew, many of whom had sailed for decades. Its passengers a mix of tourists, business professionals, and shipping clients boarded with no more apprehension than one might have boarding a commercial flight. In fact, many documented their departure on social media, sharing videos of the ship's impressive features: massive decks, infinity pools, lush interiors. It was a floating city, a self-contained world. And then, without warning, it vanished. No flares, no last words. Just a point on a digital map where it had once been, and then nothing. As the hours turned into days, and the days into weeks, confusion gave way to disbelief. International maritime authorities launched massive search and rescue operations. Aircraft scanned the sea. Naval vessels combed every square mile. Satellites were redirected. Oceanographers ran simulations. Analysts pored over every byte of data, but nothing turned up. No wreckage, no oil slicks, not a single life raft or floating suitcase. The Leviathan had been swallowed whole by the sea, leaving not even crumbs behind. As if it had never existed. And that is what makes this story different from any other maritime disappearance. Not only was it bigger than the Titanic, Not only was it more advanced, it was invisible in death. The Titanic rests on the ocean floor, photographed and studied. The Leviathan left no such trace. It defied not only safety systems, but explanation. And in doing so, it reminded us that even the most advanced human creations are still at the mercy of a force older and stronger than we can imagine. This wasn't just a ship that disappeared. It was a symbol of certainty, of confidence in engineering, of trust in progress, of belief that this time we've got it right. And with its disappearance, that confidence was shattered. What do we do when the unthinkable happens again? As we move forward in this speech, I want you to carry that question with you, because the story of the Leviathan isn't just a maritime mystery. It's a modern myth in the making, a ghost ship not from the past, but from our present. And its message, if we are willing to hear it, might be more important than any answer we'll ever find. The Leviathan's final voyage began like any other. No fanfare beyond the usual departure ceremony. No ominous warnings, just the hum of engines, the soft churn of water against hull, and a distant horizon waiting to be crossed. On a calm morning, under a sky brushed with streaks of early light, the ship left Port Egglade, a major hub on the European Atlantic coast, bound for New Carthage, a modern port city across the ocean. The route was a familiar one. Commercial vessels, cruise ships, and cargo carriers made the same trip weekly. Weather forecasts showed no sign of danger, moderate winds, mild seas, visibility clear. If anything, it was an ideal day to set sail. On board, nearly 1,400 individuals, crew, passengers, technicians, and corporate representatives went about their routines. For many, it was a business trip or a transport assignment. For others, it was leisure, a luxury passage aboard a state-of-the-art vessel. The Leviathan wasn't just massive, it was built to make its size feel effortless. Stabilizers softened the waves, soundproof cabins made the ocean's roar feel like a whisper, and onboard services ran like clockwork. It was less a journey and more a floating metropolis in motion. For the first 2 days, everything was normal. Satellite communications showed steady progress. The ship transmitted its position at regular intervals. Video calls, text messages, and social media posts flowed from passengers and crew. Images of dining halls, open ocean views, and drone shots from the top deck were shared online without concern. If anyone suspected what was to come, no record of it remains. Then silence, roughly 52 hours after departure, as the ship neared the open stretch of the mid-Atlantic. It vanished from all known tracking systems. The last automated ping was received at 02:37 UTC. It showed no signs of distress, no deviation from course, no unusual weather activity, just a routine check-in, logged like everyone before it, then nothing. At first, authorities assumed it was a temporary lapse. Communications failures, while rare, were not unheard of in deep sea crossings. Redundant systems were designed to bridge such gaps. Yet, as minutes turned to hours and hours stretched into a day, concern grew. Emergency hailing protocols were triggered, no response. Attempts to connect via secondary systems, encrypted marine channels, private satellite relays, even direct pings to the vessels on board AI. All failed. By hour 18 of radio silence, the situation had officially escalated to a full-blown maritime emergency. Search and rescue teams were scrambled from both continents. Satellite companies retasked imaging assets to comb the Leviathan's last known coordinates. Commercial vessels in the vicinity were ordered to adjust course and aid the search effort. Planes flew low over the ocean, scanning for heat signatures, flares, or floating debris. But the ocean was calm and empty. There was no wreckage, no signals, not even an oil slick. The area where the ship had last pinged was subjected to intense scrutiny. submersibles and sonar scans mapped the seafloor in ultra-high resolution. For weeks, they dragged equipment across a stretch of water hundreds of miles wide. Still nothing. It was as though the Leviathan had been erased from existence surgically and silently. Authorities explored every possibility. A catastrophic explosion, unlikely. Not a single seismic tremor was detected. A rogue wave, that theory was floated, but the Leviathan had been designed to endure such phenomena. Besides, a wave might sink a ship, but it wouldn't erase all evidence of its passing. Piracy or hijacking? Implausible. The Leviathan was too large, too visible, and too secure. Even the most sophisticated operations couldn't simply hide a vessel of that size, and again, no distress signals had been triggered. Not even automatically. Blackout via cyber attack, internal sabotage, a critical systems failure so complete that the ship had no time to respond. All were considered. None could explain the total, clinical nature of the disappearance. One by one, the possibilities fell away until what remained was a terrible emptiness, not just in the ocean, but in our understanding. In the days following the ship's disappearance, the media struggled to keep pace with public reaction. Some compared it to the Titanic, others to Flight MH370, but those comparisons lacked something essential. In both of those cases, pieces were eventually found, traces emerged, grief had somewhere to go. With the Leviathan, there was only speculation. Family members of those on board were left in limbo, no answers, no closure, just endless press conferences filled with phrases like "no new developments," "unprecedented circumstances," and "the search continues." And yet, how do you search for something that leaves no clue? Weeks passed. The world moved on as it always does. Conspiracy theories blossomed. Maritime authorities quietly scaled down their search operations. Insurance claims were processed, pending presumed loss. The Leviathan's name joined the short, chilling list of vessels that departed and never arrived. But this case is different. It cuts deeper. Because the Leviathan wasn't lost in a forgotten era, it vanished in full view of a digital world, one that prides itself on knowing everything in real time, and that's what makes the silence so deafening. When the Titanic sank, it was a tragedy. When the Leviathan vanished, it became something more, a mystery without a map, a question with no coordinates, and in that void, the only thing louder than the theories is the silence it left behind. To understand the weight of the Leviathan's disappearance, we have to grasp just how monumental the ship truly was. It's one thing to say it was bigger than the Titanic, but that phrase, while dramatic, barely scratches the surface of what the Leviathan represented. This wasn't just a ship. It was a floating triumph of human ambition, a testament to what we believed was possible when innovation, technology, and design converged at the highest level. The Titanic, in its time, was the pinnacle of maritime engineering, over 882 feet long and hailed as unsinkable. It set a standard for luxury and scale that defined the early 20th century. But the Leviathan surpassed it in every conceivable way, not just in length, but in depth, complexity, and purpose. At over 250 feet in length and 220 feet at its widest point, the Leviathan was a true behemoth. It had 22 decks, most of which housed not only cargo bays and engine systems, but full-sized amenities, shopping districts, theaters, vertical gardens, sports arenas, even emergency drone hangars. It wasn't just a cruise ship. It wasn't just a freighter. It was a hybrid, a multi-purpose megastructure designed to carry people, cargo, and data across oceans like a mobile city-state. At peak capacity, the Leviathan could carry over 30 individuals, but its final voyage held fewer, as it was operating on a specialized transatlantic route focused more on technological demonstration than commercial load. That voyage was meant to be a proof of concept to showcase how a ship of such magnitude could navigate oceanic distances autonomously, efficiently, and safely. And that's the word we keep coming back to, safely. Because every inch of the Leviathan had been built around the idea of redundancy, resilience, and fail-safes. The hull alone was a marvel, constructed from composite alloys and reinforced carbon fiber, making it not only incredibly strong, but also lighter and more fuel efficient than traditional steel. The ship had watertight compartments that could seal in under a second. It had self-righting capabilities designed to stabilize the vessel, even in the most extreme storm conditions. Its engines, hybrid electric systems powered by a blend of liquefied natural gas and solar arc, meant battery grids more efficient and environmentally friendly than any other vessel of its size. Its command systems were a fusion of human expertise and artificial intelligence, allowing the ship to self-navigate, optimize course corrections, and perform diagnostics in real time. Everything was interconnected, from the propulsion units to the plumbing, with thousands of sensors feeding data to a central AI, designed not just to manage systems, but to predict failure before it could occur. The Leviathan's creators didn't just aim to build a ship that wouldn't sink. They aimed to build a ship that wouldn't fail. A ship that could outrun storms, survive collisions, and maintain communication through even the most adverse conditions. They called it virtually indestructible, and they weren't being careless. The design had passed every simulated disaster test. It had withstood pressure tests, fire drills, blackout scenarios, and controlled collisions. On paper and in testing, it was as close to perfect as a ship could be, and that's what makes the Leviathan's fate so unsettling. You see, this wasn't a ship that simply fell victim to nature's unpredictability. This wasn't a vessel that limped through a storm, sent out distress flares, and disappeared beneath waves while people watched helplessly from afar. No, this was a ship that never got the chance to struggle. One moment it was there, strong, fast, and connected, and the next it was gone, as though the ocean had found a way not just to defeat it, but to erase it. And that brings us to an uncomfortable truth. We like to believe that bigger means safer, that more technology means more control, that with every new advancement we push back the boundaries of the unknown. The Leviathan was a physical embodiment of that belief, massive, sophisticated, seemingly invincible. It was designed not just to conquer the sea, but to defy its dangers entirely. But the sea does not yield. For all our technology, all our engineering brilliance, the ocean remains a domain we do not rule, merely visit. We sail across it, we send satellites to monitor it, we drill into it, measure its temperatures, chart its floors, but we do not own it. And when a vessel like the Leviathan disappears, the message is clear: we are still guests here. And sometimes the sea decides not to return what it has taken. The Leviathan was more than a ship. It was a symbol of what we thought we could master. Its disappearance wasn't just a technical anomaly. It was an existential rupture, a reminder that scale is not immunity, and that complexity does not guarantee invincibility. If a ship that big, that advanced, and that meticulously constructed could vanish without a trace, what else is possible? The more we marvel at what the Leviathan was, and it was extraordinary, the more haunting its fate becomes. Because a ship like that doesn't just go missing, it challenges the very definition of what it means to be missing. And as we try to explain the unexplainable, we must wrestle with an unsettling idea that perhaps no matter how big we build or how smart we design, there are still forces old, deep, and silent that operate beyond the reach of our certainty. And the Leviathan, in all its brilliance, may have encountered one. In the days immediately following the Leviathan's disappearance, the world watched with a kind of morbid anticipation. Surely it was just a matter of time before something turned up, a floating life raft, a scrap of hull, a black box beacon pinging weakly beneath the surface, but nothing came. And so began one of the most extensive and technologically advanced search operations in modern maritime history, and one of the most frustratingly fruitless. The initial response was swift. Within 6 hours of losing contact, the ship was officially declared missing. Within 12, coordinated search operations had already been launched on both sides of the Atlantic. Maritime authorities from 3 continents mobilized. Search and rescue aircraft flew overlapping patterns across hundreds of square miles of ocean. Satellite companies redirected high-resolution assets to scan the region. Civilian vessels were rerouted to the Leviathan's last known coordinates. This was not a slow-moving bureaucracy. It was a rapid, multinational, high-tech response. The disappearance of a vessel this large, this advanced, this public, it was unthinkable. It demanded answers. The search grid began with a radius of 100 nautical miles centered around the ship's last GPS ping, a seemingly reasonable starting point. But as hours turned into days and no debris surfaced, that radius expanded and expanded again. Eventually, more than 30,000 square miles of open ocean were combed. Nothing. The underwater search effort was equally aggressive. Autonomous submersibles equipped with sonar arrays, robotic cameras, and chemical sensors were deployed to scan the seabed. These weren't just fishing boats with fancy gear, they were the same elite systems used to locate deep-sea wrecks and downed military aircraft. The technology was capable of identifying objects the size of a school bus over 3 miles underwater. They found topography, thermal vents, ancient shipwrecks from centuries past, but not the Leviathan. The ship's transponders, multiple, redundant, tamper-proof, had all gone silent. None had activated their emergency location protocols. No black box beacon, no crew deployed locator buoys. Even the passive hull tracking sensors required by international maritime law for vessels of this size failed to provide a traceable signal. It was as though every system had been disabled in perfect unison or had ceased to exist altogether. To make matters more surreal, the weather during the ship's disappearance had been cooperative. The sea was calm, no storm activity, no seismic disturbances, no large marine vessel traffic in the area. Conditions that should have made detection easy only made the absence more eerie. So the investigation turned inward. Could it have been a cyber attack? A coordinated, multi-vector digital assault designed to disable systems, erase logs, shut down transponders, and render the ship electronically invisible? Unlikely. The Leviathan was built with hardened digital infrastructure, quantum, encrypted communications, AI-driven anomaly detection, and real-time backups to off-site servers. No known threat actor states, sponsored or otherwise, had demonstrated the capability to execute such a precise and total digital blackout, especially one with no fingerprints, no claims of responsibility, and no political or economic benefit. Was there a catastrophic mechanical failure? Something so sudden, so complete, that the entire vessel imploded or sank in seconds? Again, improbable. The Leviathan had been designed specifically to avoid such failures. Its hull was sectioned into survival zones. Even if one compartment was destroyed, the others were meant to remain intact. It carried dozens of failover systems. Fires, flooding, structural stress, all would have triggered emergency protocols. And yet, not one was activated. Theories swirled, from the plausible to the bizarre. Was it piracy? But who could hijack a 1,200-foot ship without being noticed? Was it sabotage from within? A rogue employee with access to the ship's core systems? Was there something deeper at play, a previously unknown flaw in the ship's design? A hidden vulnerability no one had anticipated? No theory held up for long. Every question led to more questions. Investigators, engineers, maritime analysts, intelligence operatives found themselves staring into the abyss of an event that defied every protocol, every pattern, every precedent. Months passed. The formal investigation, once daily headline news, became a quiet process behind closed doors. The search effort was scaled back, then unofficially suspended. Reports were issued, statements were made, but the truth was unavoidable. There was no evidence, and without evidence there could be no conclusion. The final official report, sanitized, technical, and deeply unsatisfying, labeled the case as an unresolved anomaly under investigation. A bureaucratic way of saying, we don't know, we may never know. Families of the missing were left in limbo. Insurance companies fought over the technicalities of declaring a vessel lost without proof. News outlets gradually shifted their focus to other headlines. And the Leviathan, once a marvel of modern progress, became a ghost, a floating myth swallowed whole, leaving only spreadsheets, search logs, and sorrow behind. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the investigation was this: it didn't fail because no one tried. It failed because even our best efforts couldn't find something that should not have been able to hide. The Leviathan didn't vanish because of a failure of technology. It vanished in spite of it. And in that silence, in that enormous echoing absence, we are left with a question no sonar can answer. In the absence of answers, something else begins to take root: speculation. Because nature abhors a vacuum, and human nature even more so. When the facts stop speaking, the mind fills the silence with possibility, and when a ship the size of the Leviathan vanishes without a single trace, not a buoy, not a bolt, not a whisper, the speculation becomes a storm of its own. The official investigation stalled under the weight of its own futility. There was no data to explain the disappearance, no wreckage to examine, no transmission to analyze. The black box, if it still existed, lay buried in silence somewhere no satellite, sonar, or drone could find. And so, from the ashes of the known came a flood of theories. Some were technical. A popular early explanation was a catastrophic hull failure, an implosion triggered by a hidden flaw deep within the ship's structure. Perhaps a manufacturing error in the carbon alloy framework had gone undetected, and under just the right pressure or stress, the ship crumpled inward, breaking apart and sinking in seconds. But even that theory raises a chilling question. If such a failure occurred, how could there be no floating debris, no signal? A hull rupture would scatter materials, trigger automatic emergency responses, release pressure waves detectable by seismographs. But there was nothing, not even a blip on sonar. Others suggested a rogue wave, a sudden wall of water rising up from nowhere, capable of smashing through steel and toppling a vessel. These waves are rare but real. One struck the MS Bremen in 2001. Another hit the Louis Majesty in 2010. Could one have struck the Leviathan? Possibly, but again no evidence of a strike, no distress call, and the Leviathan was built to withstand waves up to 100 feet high. It had been tested in simulations far more violent than what the sea offered that day. For a rogue wave to not only destroy the ship but erase it stretches the theory into improbability, so the speculation evolved. Could it have been sabotage, a deliberate act carried out by someone on board, perhaps a systems engineer with access to the core infrastructure, someone who disabled tracking, communications, and emergency protocols in a synchronized act of destruction? Plausible, yes, but again, deeply difficult to execute. The ship's internal systems were monitored redundantly. One override might go unnoticed for seconds, two might be delayed, but disabling all failsafes in perfect sequence, in total silence, with no leaks, no messages, no warnings. It would have required either an inside team of unimaginable skill or a system-wide vulnerability no expert had ever seen or imagined. From there, the theories drifted further into the shadows. Was it a cyber attack? An invisible digital assault that hijacked the ship's AI, rerouted it, and concealed it from the world. Some pointed to the Leviathan's heavy reliance on autonomous systems, advanced navigation software, machine learning diagnostics, artificial intelligence assisting in everything from propulsion to plumbing. Could the ship have been taken over, redirected to a pre-programmed location, or sent on a suicide path by an undetected malware implant? It's a tantalizing theory, but even in the darkest corners of cybersecurity forums, experts were skeptical. The kind of infiltration needed to simultaneously spoof all outbound telemetry, crash all internal backups, and block every emergency transmission would require technology no state actor publicly possesses and a motive no one could identify. And then, as it always does, speculation crossed the line into the unknown. Some claimed the Leviathan had sailed into a magnetic anomaly, a region of the ocean where Earth's electromagnetic fields behave erratically, disturbing instruments and possibly pulling large vessels off course. The so-called Bermuda Triangle effect, updated for a modern audience, but the ship's route did not pass through any such region. Others proposed more dramatic explanations: deep sea vortexes, quantum anomalies, spontaneous wormholes, even extraterrestrial interference. Most scientists dismissed these claims outright, but the public imagination is not so easily swayed by skepticism. One theory that gained notable attention was the concept of deliberate erasure, that someone or something had intentionally removed the Leviathan from existence. Not just sunk it, erased it, hidden its physical remains, neutralized its digital footprint, and silenced its human witnesses. But why? Here, the theories fractured into paranoia. Some blamed powerful governments. Others whispered of secret weapons tests or classified seafloor installations. Some believed the Leviathan saw something it wasn't supposed to: a submarine, a secret experiment, a breach in the fabric of what we call reality. Most of these theories, of course, are fueled by one thing: the lack of anything else. Because humans don't just crave answers, we require them. We build our understanding of the world on patterns, on cause and effect. When a plane crashes, we want the black box. When a ship sinks, we want to see the wreckage. We want a why, something to point to, something that explains the loss and restores the balance between what we know and what we fear. The Leviathan offers us no such comfort. It disappeared in a way that bypassed the rules, not just the laws of engineering or physics, but the unspoken rule that when something that big is lost, it must leave behind a story. Instead, we have only theories, some grounded, some speculative, some desperate, but all of them born from the same haunting reality: we don't know, we may never know, and that void more than any data breach, system failure, or act of God is what unsettles us most. Because if a ship like the Leviathan can vanish, what else can disappear without a trace? When the ocean takes something, it rarely gives it back unchanged. But in the case of the Leviathan, the ocean didn't just take it, refused to even admit anything happened. And that silence, more than any tragedy, is what now echoes across the maritime world. Because the story of the Leviathan isn't just about the loss of a ship, it's about the loss of certainty. A loss that reached far beyond the vessel itself into our confidence, our science, and perhaps most disturbingly, our belief that we truly understand the world around us. For years, we've lived under the illusion that with enough innovation, enough data, and enough control, we can engineer our way out of mystery. That technology isn't just progress, it's protection. Ships don't just vanish anymore. Planes don't fall from the sky without a trace. Disasters don't happen without someone somewhere knowing the how, the when, and the why, until they do, and the Leviathan, in vanishing so completely, tore a hole through that illusion. If a ship of its magnitude, equipped with state of The art, communications, real-time tracking, and autonomous diagnostics can disappear without warning, without wreckage, without one single thread of evidence. Then it begs a larger question: what else do we believe is impossible simply because it hasn't happened yet? There are lessons to learn, of course. Maritime policy has already begun to shift. Investigations into emergency system redundancies are being reopened. Experts are asking hard questions about cybersecurity at sea, about the blind spots of AI-run vessels, about whether we've traded too much human oversight for digital automation. Some argue the Leviathan should never have relied so heavily on self-monitoring systems. Others blame the increasingly complex architecture of modern ships, so advanced that, ironically, even minor errors can become catastrophically opaque. The balance between simplicity and sophistication has been challenged, and it will be debated in boardrooms, shipyards, and academic journals for years to come. But even as the technical lessons are passed and the industry reforms itself in the shadow of the Leviathan's absence, there remains something much harder to process, something that no manual, no policy, no update can fully address. What do we do with the not knowing? In the years following the Titanic's sinking, divers found the wreck. Artifacts were recovered. The black box from flight MH370 is still being hunted. Even in the greatest disasters, we eventually find something, someone to tell the story. But in this case, no story was left behind. Just a cliffhanger suspended over open ocean. And for the families of those on board, loved ones who boarded with laughter and expectation and vanished into digital silence, that is the most excruciating part. Not the loss itself, but the absence of a reason for it. There's no closure in mystery, only a slow, grinding ache that never fully settles, the unanswered call, the unopened suitcase, the birthday that will come each year without a face to celebrate. And so, what is the legacy of the Leviathan? Is it a monument to human overreach? A warning that nature still holds dominion over all our machines? Or is it something more existential, a reminder that even in an age of global positioning, AI, and constant surveillance, there are still places in this world where no signal can reach and no certainty can survive? The Leviathan's name was meant to evoke grandeur, strength, awe, scale, but now it has taken on another meaning closer to the original myth from which it came. In ancient texts, the Leviathan was a creature of the deep, unknowable, untouchable, coiled beneath the surface of the world's understanding. Perhaps it's fitting, then, that this ship should share that name, because it too has become legend, not in the poetic sense, but in the truest form of the word, a tale that defies explanation, invites speculation, and resists closure, and so we are left not with facts, but with questions. Some technical, some personal, some haunting in their simplicity. What happened? Did anyone see it coming? Could it happen again? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, has it happened before and we simply didn't notice? These are the questions that will linger long after the official inquiries have concluded, long after the headlines have faded, long after the world returns to its rhythms, because this mystery doesn't just belong to those who built the ship or those who lost someone aboard it. It belongs to all of us. It is a reminder that no matter how vast our knowledge becomes, mystery still exists, that beneath the surface of the ocean of our technology, of our perceived control, there remains something older, quieter, and far less concerned with our need for answers. So perhaps the lesson of the Leviathan is not about fear or failure or blame. Perhaps the real legacy is humility, the kind that reminds us we are still learning, the kind that urges us to listen more carefully to the silence between signals, the kind that doesn't just ask how such a ship could vanish, but what we still don't understand about the world we're sailing through. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the real story begins.